Good morning, everybody. I actually feel quite humbled by some of the presentations. Listening to Ian Lonsdale, where were you right at the beginning? I mean, really, we needed you. The story of the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail has been very different. I'm sure that if we were to do it today, if we had all the money that has been spent on it, we would have done it up to the same standard as the Northern Rivers. When I visited the Northern Rivers Rail Trail, I was very impressed. I'm kind of a connoisseur of rail trails, and I could appreciate the design features, not quite to the detail that Ian has just given us, but now that he's given us that detail, I think it's a beautiful rail trail, if only. We are a little bit different. I was given this topic, rail trail, stage development, rail trail stage development, and I called up Paul, who was organising the conference, and I said, I'm not about stage development, I'm about activism. So he added politics. I ended up with both, and I'll just make the best I can of it. He also added a few extra bits: reading the political landscape, active and passive paths to success, and being prepared for stage delivery. Now, some of what I'm about to talk about here for a minute has already gone before. I mean, they've been covered in the previous presentations, but it's worthwhile just kind of putting them all together in one place. I have to say, as a rail trail activist, I wish I'd known at the beginning what I was taking on, because it's been a 10-year journey, and I'm going to try and share that journey because it's been an experience. What do you need? You need, as Craig was outlining, a railway corridor with clear title. You need proximity of population, transport, and pre-existing tourism assets. You need some community activists. Now, that's not necessary, it's not essential, but there's lots of situations where you do need a community activist group or somebody to be the spark to light the fire. My understanding is that the Great Victorian Rail Trails was actually initiated by the 3 local councils because they were really heavy into tourism, so that would be an exception. But I think most of the rail trails that I've read about or I've kind of experienced, there's been an activist group that's been involved somewhere. If you're going to run a campaign, you need to be good at marketing. I'm not necessarily talking about marketing the trail, but marketing your campaign, which is about marketing the trail. I did actually ask if I could have this in front of me. Just hang on a minute, see if I can move it. I actually only learned how to use PowerPoint 3 days ago, so good. Yeah, I'm good. I can manage that. That's much better for me. Can you still hear me? Right. You need a feasibility study, obviously. You need local government support. You need state and federal government funding, because it's unlikely that the local government's going to have it. You need resilience to overcome setbacks. We'll cover that in a few minutes. And you need a management structure. How did this work for the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail? It's a long story, 22 years in the making. So how long did it take you to do your rail trail, Ian? 5, right, okay. That was a fast track. But you haven't done the whole rail trail. No, it's still a way to go. So we were fortunate. The Brisbane Valley Rail Trail line ceased operations in 1993, and crucially, the Queensland government retained ownership of the railway corridor. We have another railway corridor in the region from Caboolture to Kilcoy, and parts of it have been sold off. And the impression I have, I was just looking over there at Craig, is that we will never recover the bits that have sold off. So there is a rail trail up to Wameran, is it? but that's as far as it's going to go, and there are moves afoot to try and develop a trail that's not a rail trail that connects the two, because Kilcoy feels they missed out on the rail trail experience because they're not connected. Proximity of a large population, well, we're very well placed because we're close to Brisbane, southeast Queensland. We've got all the population centres reaching out as far as west as Toowoomba, and people can get from most of those areas can get to us within an hour. They can reach one section or another of the rail trail within an hour, so we're easily accessible. And you also need activists to sustain the rail trail. Now, these two guys in rail trail history are the heroes. So as early as 1996, the former Nanango Shire councillor, Mayor Reg McCallum, and Councillor Kevin Allery first proposed converting the closed railway line into a rail trail and maintained their interest in the rail trail. Unfortunately, Kevin Allery didn't live to see the fulfillment of his dream, but Reg McCallum passed earlier on this year, and he was always a great advocate, and I think right up to the end he was riding horsebacks on the rail trail. We have a few community groups. There isn't just the one. We have the Ambassadors for the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail. We have the Friends of the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail. We have Paul Heymans. I would describe myself as an accidental activist. I used to write a column for the local paper, and if you have any experience of writing an op-ed column, it's a hungry beast that needs to be fed. And every week I had to produce something, write about something, and the rail trail was happening. And I thought, oh, well, you know, why don't I get up a petition and be really annoying and see what happens? And then subsequently we formed the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail. And I have to say that what we've achieved in terms of activism on the rail trail could not have been done without my colleagues. We have 10 committee members, and we have our treasurer who's sitting back there. We have Siobhan, who is our deputy president and possibly going to take over from me when I retire, which will be sometime soon. And we have Noel, who is he actually works for Microsoft, so, you know, it's like a really useful person to have as your secretary, as somebody who works for Microsoft, I can tell you that. We also organise a variety of events on the rail trail, including the annual BVRT Festival of Cycling, night rides, gourmet experiences, art rides, adventure rides, exploring the BVRT region, and profits from our events are invested in murals and landscaping projects for the rail trail. So building support and overcoming resistance. Ian mentioned biosecurity as being a big issue. There were also, once we had enthusiasm for the project in the former Nanango Shire, where there was actually less, the rail trail goes for quite a large amount of that section of the rail trail goes through forestry, so there was less problems with landowners, and they were very keen to get that section developed. But the southern section, the landowners raised concerns about crime, loss of privacy, impact on farming activities, bushfire risks, biosecurity, effects on livestock, litter, toilet waste, unauthorised trail users, and critically, ongoing costs to ratepayers. We did, if you're running an activist group, then social media is tailor-made. It's free, and you can reach quite a few people. We currently have 37,000 members and followers on our 2 Facebook platforms. And developing a website should be high on your list of priorities. We were in a situation when I got involved that half the rail trail had been done and half of it had not been done. And I spent a happy year just collecting data and taking photographs so that I had original photographs and building a website, which is now Brisbane Valley Rail Trail Adventures, which is a privately run website. Has the advantage, as Craig mentioned, one of the problems for the state government and councils is you can't necessarily advertise local businesses, but I can, and that's what what I use it for. We also made a number of videos, including commissioning 2 professionally made videos with sponsorship from local businesses. And we did radio interviews, and we did a few TV holiday programs so that we were able to promote the rail trail. One of the things you need for a rail trail, and I have to say, Mike Halliburton is here, and I had talked to him before, and I've read his report, and it was such an honor to meet him last night. The man's there. He is, if you like, the father of the rail trail as we know it at the moment. And you also need local government support. Despite opposition by the majority of Eschshire councillors, the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail project was supported by former Eschshire Mayor Jean Bray and Economic Development Officer Warren Oxenham. And in 2003, because there was so much opposition to the rail trail, they managed to develop the first section of the rail trail, which was between Fernvale and Lowood, but it was done as a green space program. It wasn't called the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail. Just don't mention the war. But it did eventually. Eventually, they did. When they started running a fun run on it, they did start calling it the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail. But that was the first section to be developed. And in 2006, the Nanango Shire Council developed and opened the Linville to Blackbutt section, which was then the second section of the rail trail to be developed. Now, one of the interesting things about that is that the former Eschshire Council was so opposed to having the rail trail that they were quite happy for the then Nanango Shire to take out a lease on the section all the way from Blackbutt down to Linville, despite the fact that about 2/3 of that is in the Eschshire region. So during the 2006 Queensland state elections, the Queensland Labor Party made an election commitment to promote healthier lifestyles through recreational trails. And on 22nd of January 2007, the Queensland Deputy Premier and Minister for Infrastructure, Anna Bligh, announced $3.6 million for the development of a recreational rail trail from Ipswich to Blackbutt. So note that it's not at this point going all the way through to Yarraman, and $3.6 million, even back then, wasn't a lot of money. The project was now well underway, or so we thought. Between 2007 and 2010, further sections of the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail were progressively developed and opened. 2007, Linville to Moore. 2009, S to Fernvale and S to Toogoolawah. 2010, Blackbutt to Nakoo and Nakoo to Yarraman. But those setbacks. In 2011, significant flooding caused severe damage. The 2011 floods. They could totally wrecked the rail trail. None of the sections had been developed to a high standard. Surface quality was poor. There were over 80 gates. Creek gully crossings were rudimentary, and 2 critical sections from Ipswich to Moore, Ipswich to Wanora and Toogoolawah to Moore were missing. So you had a rail trail that was done in segments, but the critical bits were completely missing. It was pretty much dead in the water because no one was going to fund reparations. And then the state government made an announcement that they were going to cease all funding to the rail trail in 2012. That was in the government led by Campbell Newman. In the words of the local member, we'd all like nice things, but with the current debt situation, we cannot afford rail trails. And I think that might have been round about when Craig mentioned that he was told that he was to spend not one more penny on it. But the winds of fortune change. In 2014, there was a complete reversal. And the Newman government decided that they were pro-rail trails, and they announced a $3.5 million funding for rail trails. Part of that went to fund the South Burnett Rail Trail, and I was tipped off by the then local state member, Deb Frecklington, that if Somerset Council wanted the funding, all they had to do was to put up their hand for it. But there was one significant problem. They weren't interested. They didn't want a bar of it. And only councils could apply for the money. So as I said earlier, I used to write a local weekly op-ed column for the local paper. It was widely read. And I saw the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail project as an opportunity to engage community interest. I started the petition, and I also announced grandly that I was going to ride the whole rail trail, because I actually didn't know very much about it. So we decided that we would ride it. And I announced my intention on social media. And as you can see from the photo in the slide, started off with a few neighbors and friends. Those are the children of a local businessman, and his wife came along, and my neighbors. And it kind of grew from there. If you look at the slide on the left, we had a meeting with one of the local businesses, which is a llama farm. Bottom right, we actually organized a ride where it was a joint ride with horse riders, and we arrived at Tugulawa, and the people in the back include the mayor and the deputy mayor, who we managed to persuade to come along. And we had fairly rudimentary transport for the bikes, but eventually we hired a coach, and we borrowed car trailers and horse floats and God knows what to carry the bikes from Moore to Yarraman, and we had a huge number of people. It was like really a big event, and I didn't realize that we were going to get such a big following. One of the things we did, because Tugulawa to Moore was incomplete, and that was a missing section of the rail trail, one of the things we did was to map a detour route so that you could still do the whole rail trail, and it was actually a really beautiful section of rail trail. It was on minor country roads, and we mapped it in partnership with Mark Roberts, who does quite a few of the maps, and so he does mountain biking in southeast Queensland and so on and so forth, and he's also done a guide to the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail. And that was a game changer, because all of a sudden people could do the whole rail trail if they wanted to. So then we had a situation where we've been lobbying the Somerset Council to apply for the funding. And in 2014, we actually succeeded in getting a motion through where they agreed to apply for the funding subject to the terms and conditions. And we knew that those were deadly words. Basically, there was no way, and there was no, unless the state government reached into its pocket and paid for everything, they weren't going to apply. They weren't going to apply for that money. If they had to maintain it in any way, their argument was that it was going to add 5% to the rates. But it was never put to the test. Campbell Newman decided to call a snap election. It was a bad move. He lost, and we had a change of government. Funding was no longer available. But I think actually that worked in our favor, because we launched a new change.org petition and campaign, this time calling on the Palaszczuk government to apply to supply the money. The petition was signed by over 1,000 people, and we actually presented it to Parliament. And on the 12th of January 2016, it's a famous letter that I received from Jackie Tradd's office announcing that we were going to get the funding. Well, yeah, but it was subject to Somerset Council accepting the terms and conditions. We had a little bit of a problem, which was that Somerset Council was completely resistant, and it felt like we were winning battles, but we weren't able to win the war. And Somerset Council, I have to say, Somerset Council back then was very different from what it is now. But Somerset Council back then, it was like inbuilt into their culture that they were opposed to the rail trail, no matter what. They didn't want it. So we changed the council, as you do. It was a protracted battle. We had 6 weeks of complete warfare. I was subject of attack. I received solicitors' letters, but we had a candidate who was standing against the incumbent mayor, and she was running what can best be described as a Trump-style campaign. I had my column. I had a lot of support in the community, so I was in a position to support the sitting mayor, which is Graham Lehman, on the understanding that he would get the rail trail done. And it seemed like a street fight. I mean, it was so bad that when I went to some of the Meet the Candidates events, I needed protection. I used to have 2 very burly local businessmen sitting behind me just to make sure that I didn't get attacked or assaulted. But we succeeded. We changed the council. We then had a council that was pro-rail trail, and they kept their word. It took a couple of years. They took the money from the state government, and Andrew Johnson, who is now the CEO of Somerset Council, but back then he was the project manager, he went and did the feasibility study, much like Ian Lonsdale was talking about, and he said, I think we can do it better if we could get some more money. So there was a little bit of a delay, but they doubled the money, and they did the Tugulu to Moore section, which I think, most people enjoy. But it didn't stop there. As Craig mentioned earlier, a few months later, as the icing on the cake, the heritage-listed Lockyer Creek Bridge was renovated by DTMR at a cost of $3.5 million. Every time I mention $3.5 million to Craig, he says, about. And in the intervening years, I have kept track of the amount of money that's been spent on the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail. It's like, if you include everything, the bridges, the surface improvements, the flood repairs, because we got badly flooded in 2021, I had to do a lot of repair work. I reckon about $40 million has been spent on the rail trail over the past 10 years, which is a long way from the original $3.5 million. And then finally, we got to the management structure. In 2021, DTMR commissioned a 5-year strategic plan for the BVRT that provides a blueprint for the future development of the rail trail. The strategic plan recommended an advisory management structure for the BVRT consisting of 2 committees, an overarching advisory committee consisting of senior executives from the 4 local councils and TMR, and a steering committee consisting of representatives from the 4 local councils and not-for-profit community organizations and people with relevant expertise. And I now sit on that steering committee and do, Andrew and Lee is there, and Claire, so we've got 4 members of the steering committee here. And finally, they go largely unrecognized, but many of the rail trail users may not be aware of their existence, but we owe a huge vote of thanks to the state and local council staff who have worked miracles behind the scenes to make the BVRT what it is today. A big thank you to all of the bureaucrats and so on who put up with us over the years. And just to make a comment about events, if you're running a campaign or you're a community group, if you can organize events, it's a great way to raise money. We ran the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail Festival of Cycling in earlier on this year. We attracted 351 participants, and we raised $20,000 profit, and we invest that money in murals and landscaping of benefit to the rail trail. So even though we have succeeded in getting the rail trail completed, we've now moved to a situation where we're able to actually focus on investments which enhance the rail trail experience. This is the kind of money that basically you're not going to get council to do because there isn't funding available for it, and we're kind of filling that gap. Thank you.
And don't step down yet, Paul. I am sure there are going to be questions. Dom only has easy questions.
You mentioned early on, you talked about the S Council, the Nanango Council, and then the council amalgamations came along in 2008-ish. Yep. What was the impact there? I know some of those council laws stayed on with ESC, but did that make a difference to this process, do you think, when the council went from S to Somerset? Not really?
The same councillors were still in position, and two of them owned land that the rail trail crossed, and it was just never going to happen.
That wouldn't have impacted their decision making at all, because they would have been making decisions for the good of the community, Paul.
But I have been told by an insider that it did. I used to say it as a joke, and then I discovered it was true. I can even name them. But one of those landowners, so we used to have a local vicar who was really into cycling, and one of those local landowners was in his congregation, and the local vicar used to organise rides on the rail trail, and he used to bring us tea. He'd come with cake and tea, and with his ute, and he loved it. So,
Paul, you mentioned briefly events, and we've run some pretty good events on the rail trail. I wonder if you'd comment on what sort of impact you think that had on your sort of campaigns.
Okay, there's so much that I had to miss out, but the big thing that we did, I mean, Richard yesterday was talking about cycling culture. I'm a cyclist. I'm 75 years of age, and when people tease me about riding an e-bike, I look at them over my glasses and I say, I've been riding a bike for 70 years. How old are you? Right? I've ridden on several continents. When I lived in London, I used to commute. I used to ride everywhere by bicycle because it was the quickest way to get around. And I've been riding a bicycle since I came here. And we gradually realized that what we needed to get the rail trail moving was people riding bikes on the rail trail. I have to say that Andrew Demack from Bicycle Queensland was our tutor, if you like. I remember going to a meeting, it was pouring rain, it was a meeting that had been organised, and I met Andrew for the first time, and I said, do you think you might organise an event on the rail trail? He said, yeah, we might do that. And he did. And that was, I think, the first big event on the rail trail was the Rail Trail Experience. Can you remember the year?
2016, 15 or 16? It was part of Bike Week.
Yeah, it was on the section of the rail trail which was open all the way from Toogoolawah through to Fernvale, and we had over 300 participants. It was like, in rail trail terms, back in those days, if you were riding out on the rail trail and you met another cyclist, it would be an occasion to have a chat. You'd stop. It was like, wow, there's another one. If you tried to do that now, you wouldn't be able to make any progress.
Thanks for that, Paul. Ros.
Thank you. Paul, I'd just like to congratulate you. You've been such a fantastic advocate for the BVRT. You are Mr. BVRT. I knew a little bit about the story, but I actually didn't know a lot of that story.
Right,
so it's
thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And
it's been a love affair, I have to say. For me, the rail trail, somebody posted recently on our Facebook page, he said, I've just done the rail trail. The rail trail is God. Right.
Not sure I'd go that far.
I'm not sure I'd go that far. I'm an atheist, but it is. It's spiritual. It's like you move a fucking rock on the rail trail, I can tell you've moved that rock.
So, as you know, I'm involved with the South Burnett Rail Trail and then the KKRT, and ideally we'd like it to go all the way from Ipswich to Gympie. How much of an effect do you think that will have on visitors to this region?
I think Any rail, I mean, Ian referred earlier to the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail being in competition with the Northern Rivers. No, it isn't. We're not in competition. We're complementary. People come and do our rail trail and they go around and say, oh,
What else?
let's find another one. Okay, Northern Rivers. Right, we're going to do Northern Rivers, and then we're going to do, Boyne to Burnett. And people start collecting rail trails. It's a bit like park runs. You want to do all of them because rail trails are great. Let's go and do the Otago Rail Trail. We're all complementary to each other. We're not in competition. We need to be working together. And if you can extend the rail trail, I remember in the early days of South Burnett, your businesses were saying it's not going to do anything for us. And now they've turned around, haven't they? Yeah. Just the connecting route. We need that connecting route done in the middle, please. The
link trail.
The creek, the link trail. Yeah, just that little bit in the middle. The rest is beautiful. You've done a great job, but just that bit in the middle.
Last one, Siobhan.